Welcome to Ethics Goes the Movies, where each week we dive into dilemmas in popular films and discuss real-world situations. I'm your host, John Boldridge, and today we are discussing the 2015 Academy Award-winning film Spotlight. It is based on a true story by the Boston Globe investigating team. Spotlight is played by Mark Ruffalo, Rachel McAdams, and Michael Keaton are the stars in this movie. And to introduce our board today, we have Jack Garvey with us, and Zana Franklin, and also Evelyn Levesque.
Perfect.
Guys, we're going to go around, talk about, first off, before we get into the questions, where you're from and maybe your age and what you do for fun.
What I do for fun? Okay, I'm Evelyn Levesque. I'm 20 years old. I'm from Southern California, Orange County to be more specific. What do I do for fun? I watch a lot of movies, actually, so this is kind of up my alley.
I'm Zana Franklin. I'm 20 years old, and I'm from Atlanta, Georgia. And what I like to do for fun back home is spend time with my family. I also love watching movies.
My name's Jack Garvey. I'm from the Boston suburbs of Holliston, Massachusetts. And something I like to do for fun is go to different sports games and take photos.
So I'm John. I just mentioned that. I'm from Louisville, Kentucky, down the road here from Cincinnati. And talking about this movie today, it was released back in 2015. It was directed by Tom McCarthy and won 2 Oscars back in 2016, Best Picture and Best Original Screenplay. As we mentioned, stars Michael Keaton, Mark Ruffalo, Rachel McAdams, and some more stars across this movie. When we first get into this movie, there's a lot of things we can hit on the ethics side here today, and we'll get into those. But first off, I want to mention, did anyone see any preconceived notions when they first watched this movie, Spotlight?
I felt that I think we all kind of knew what was coming because we all know the story. It's based on a true story. So the end result wasn't really surprising to me. Something that was really surprising to me was how they got there and kind of how long it takes and how many stories like this are out there, but they can get buried so deep. And so you have to have the right reporters, the right team, the right resources in order to bring them and shed light on them.
I also think it's important to highlight that this investigation took place during 9/11. So I think it's cool how they really emphasize more on this case rather than that. I think that was a good decision on their part to do that.
Evelyn?
I would agree with that. I think they could have easily just said, 2001, and obviously 9/11 is such a big deal, but that had a whole other reasoning with their release of the article too, so that kind of added more depth of just the state of the country, and then them dropping this whole being this big issue that has been happening for so long. I think I also agree that was really interesting to add. Before watching this, I read the summary online, and I honestly didn't know this actually was a movie because we were little when this came out. But I was a little hesitant because I was like, oh, we're gonna watch this movie when we all attend a Catholic school. But after watching it, I found it very important as a Catholic to watch because not only Catholicism has this sort of history, but unfortunately many other world religions are like this too. So I think it was pretty educational, for me at least.
I think it's good to understand, not just as a Catholic myself, but also a person who attended Catholic school, has always gone to Catholic school, that it's important to understand what happens in your Catholic faith and around your Catholic church. So I say with this movie in particular, and when we picked this movie, I already got to see it a couple of years ago, but rewatched it, just how hard it is to follow. There's so many moving parts in this movie. There's so much information thrown at you at one time, so you really have to zone in, lock in, kind of like if you're a lawyer or a victim or, something that happens, you put yourself in this person's situation. If you do that, you can kind of understand the movie a little better. So I want to start out with first the reporters. First off, what kind of ethical responsibilities do reporters have to do with situations with sensitive information and also explosive information? And in this situation, how far should journalists go to to uncover the truth, and also what does that mean in this powerful institution around this church situation we have. Jack?
Yeah, I mean, I think they have a duty to do it because I think, as like we all know, and kind of the theme throughout the movie was that this is a very important story to tell. But at the same time, you saw a couple moments where it was so traumatizing for these victims to come out and say what they said. Like, they would break down emotionally. Some of them, one of the characters, it seems like he turned to using drugs. I saw it looked like it was needle marks on his arm. So it's just such a tragic situation. So as a reporter, you have to apply a lot of empathy, a lot of compassion, and a lot of understanding, and just kind of listen. But I mean, I think they all went about it the right way. They took their time with the story. They didn't rush to do it, which something like this, I know they were talking about this with like the Boston Herald, which is, like, I'm from Boston, like when you go to the store, there's two papers, the Globe and the Herald. And they were worried that if the Herald gets it, they're going to rush it, and then they're going to mess it up, and then this will all be for nothing. So I think that time, capacity, and idea was so important here, and I thought they handled that really well.
As like a reporter and just like journalism in general, their main priority is like telling the truth. And so I think even though this was a true situation, like even the acting with all of like the famous actors, like they really portrayed like their genuine concern, and they wanted to like, I don't even know how to explain it. Like it seemed real. Like, it seemed like I was watching, like, somebody's, like, video diary, like, this actually happened to them. And, like, obviously they just wanted to uncover the truth, so I feel like if they, like, there was at one point in the movie, towards the end, where Mark Ruffalo's character, Michael, it was before the documents were unsealed or whatever. He was like, we need to do this now, and he was like getting super heated and super upset. But then Michael Keaton's character is like, no, we can't do it, because if we do, then we don't have proof, basically, which was the whole ordeal of them having the documents in the first place. But like even that, like the acting and just like the attention to detail, like really just made this movie over the top.
Talking about, like, when you mention how big the church is, and we're not just talking about like a barber shop or something that's a small organization. This is a massive organization throughout Boston. And when you talk about large institutions and their ethical responsibility to be informed with their members, and when you have so many members of your church, where is this issue portrayed, do you guys think, between the general public and telling your audience, your members, what's going on in the church? You think they did the wrong thing not letting their audience be informed?
Well, I think the whole reason why they don't want it to be public is because people are going to be really upset and disturbed, and people will start to rebel. So I understand like the whole image thing, but then also you're creating this even worse image by not saying anything. It's a really sticky situation because it's almost, the whole theme that I like kind of uncovered, or not uncovered, but it was pretty much evident, is that like with these priests, it's essentially an abuse of power. Like, it is super sad, especially with young kids, which makes the whole situation even sadder. But like the abuse of power, and like even not only with the priest, but like with the cardinal law, like saying he couldn't. Cardinal law was the cardinal, right? And yeah, okay, getting that right. Something like he's even higher than the priests, but then also another form of like abuse of power was like the lawyers. Even though they were legally like not allowed to say anything, they I want to say they could have. What was that other character? The lawyer that Rachel McAdams and Michael Keaton kept going back to.
Yeah, well, it seems like in the end he did end up saying, like, you have to go back and look, I gave you 20 names all these years ago. But then you can see the Globe even kind of buried it themselves, because kind of like what I was saying earlier, like they just didn't have the right reporters, maybe the right staff, or maybe the right supervisors, that they didn't want to go after this.
Yeah.
Jack, how do you weigh institutional loyalty against public welfare in this situation? Like, how do you weigh, an organization versus how do you weigh this organization, this big church organization, and then we have its members who are not informed. I feel like the right thing to do, of course, is to let your members be informed, but that's also going to take backlash against a certain church, a certain priest, and a certain organization. So there's a big conflict here, and anyone who wants to answer, I feel like at some point that does play a factor.
I think one of the biggest flaws with the church in this instance is that they knew they had a problem, but I feel like they refused to believe it. They talked about, shuffling the priests around, like every 2-3 years,
Sick
someone was
leave,
getting
stuff
reassigned,
like
sick
that.
leave, all this stuff. So the church knew. I think they had a preconceived notion of, it's just 1 or 2 bad apples, when in reality, I have the quote up. Mike says 6% is 90. Walter says 90 priests. Ben says if there were 90 of these bastards, people would know. And then Mike says maybe they do. So I think, the church knew they had this problem, but they just refused to believe it, because they talk about it in the beginning of the movie when the new editor comes in and he's kind of talking about the idea, like, over 50% of people that read the Globe and are subscribed are, Christians. So when you're reporting on this, you're reporting on something that's going to upset over half of your base, and maybe even some of them are such devout believers that they might not even believe your story and call into question your journalistic integrity and all these different things. So it's a really tricky thing to navigate.
Yeah, when they were calculating and looking through all the names of how many priests there potentially were in Boston, that was my heart sunk to my stomach. I'm like, oh my gosh. I feel like with new allegations that you hear today, you only hear about one, when in reality there are hundreds. At the end of the movie, in the ending credits, it had all the cities at the end. I saw my own city there, so that made me a little sick, but it's also just the reality of how common it is, and it makes it even more depressing to watch, but also makes you more knowledgeable and educated on the fact. Not that as an individual, I don't know what I could personally do to help the situation, but just to acknowledge and be able to if I were to discover somebody in my life actually went through that, then I could understand more.
I think too, when you talked about cities, Boston in particular is known as a very Catholic town. They have a lot of things Catholic in that city, and being able to travel there a couple times, you see that firsthand when you get to Boston. Unlike a lot of other cities, if you go down south, Boston and up north, a lot of those cities are very Catholic. So, being very loyal is one thing priests are known for. They are extremely loyal to their faith. They are extremely loyal to their church, their institution, their people. Where does loyalty play a factor for you guys in this whole complicated mess? You can talk about where the innocence of just trying to be loyal for this organization plays a factor on these people. I think it's a huge question to be answered where loyalty comes in.
I think the team wanted to, stay loyal to the truth, instead of having.
Are you saying as an individual person, as a Catholic, where my personal loyalty
I guess
is,
I'm asking,
or is the reporters in the movie?
Well, I'm asking at what point does moral obligation to protect the innocents override loyalty to an organization?
Yeah.
So to that point, yes.
Obviously, this whole situation is absolutely disgusting, but is it going to make me not be Catholic? No. Because I don't think any Catholic thinks this is a good thing. Nobody's oh my gosh, this is great. No, obviously, no one's going to say, anything like that. So, but it's also just, kind of a reality we have to face, unfortunately. It is going to happen. There's no way to not do it, because priesthood is such a big part of the Catholic faith, but I really don't see how there is a possible solution, which is really unfortunate and sad to think about, but I can't think of anything. But obviously I don't believe in the abuse of children, but will it make my outlook on priests a little different? 100%. I am now going to be probably sitting in church. Probably.
Well, that's a good question. Did you guys, before watching this movie, ever think and ever hear anything about something like this happening?
Absolutely. I definitely feel like, honestly, every religion, not even just like Catholic, I think it's, I feel like in this world, anything can happen. So,
Yeah.
I think.
And it's anyone, no matter who you have like so much trust in, because like priests, you're supposed to have like so much trust in these people, and then this sort of thing like happens.
Jack, you have something?
Yeah, I think like you were mentioning, like it's not just like Catholics, it's every religion. I mean, I feel like it's everywhere in the world. When you have a group of people that are highly respected, they have a lot of power, you always put
like
a lot
bosses,
of trust into
stuff
them.
like that.
Yeah, like they
Teachers, too.
can kind of like not manipulate the situation, but like you saw when some of these victims were talking about it, it was just started as like little things, and then they just snowballed.
Like getting ice cream.
Yeah.
Wasn't that one of the stories?
So yeah, I think you see a lot of that stuff happen. I mean, I know like when I was growing up, I was like I was an altar boy until like high school maybe. I went to public high school outside of Boston, but I haven't personally been to church in probably over 5 years, and it's like, did this play a role in it? Yeah, sure, but I also have like my own beliefs, my own kind of like skepticisms, because I feel like, again, kind of like what this movie touched on, the churches seems to be a little hypocritical. So I think like the reporters bringing out this story kind of didn't make me kind of doubt any of my like previous choices. It made me kind of feel like stand firm almost.
Yeah, because it's not like the faith it's not the people who are in charge of the faith that you are believing in. Like, I don't believe that like my pastor at my like home parish like is this some god. I actually very dislike my priest at my church. He's not the nicest man. But like it's more of like believing in the faith and finding your own beliefs and not believing in what the church is doing, if that makes sense.
We also talked about the church, but now we're going to talk about some of the victims, and many of these victims chose not to speak up for decades. And do you think they were ethically responsible for exposing the abuse sooner, or does their silence and fear justify and be okay? Is that understandable? How do you think they handled this situation and this trauma and the fear when it comes to individuals stepping forward and just trying to fight this injustice?
I think it's definitely justified. I feel like with any situation like that, like it would be hard to talk about.
I know you talked about timing earlier, and when it gets to the news, that's something that is very important. But when you look at timing when it comes to a victim, I don't think there is any. We can all say I don't believe there's any one timing that's right for one person. But when one person starts to come out, do you feel like it's more? You feel like it's more important for, okay, one person came out, now I need to start saying something as well?
I think it's definitely like forms like a domino effect. Like once other people start,
like at the end of the movie when they got all the calls.
Yeah. I think people feel probably like, hey, like there's a chance that I could get like, justice for this.
Mm-hmm. And I don't think it's a matter of some people not saying it. I like obviously the fear aspect of it all, but like they probably have seen that like some of these victims that have spoken out about it didn't get anything from it because those priests are still out there doing whatever. They were protected by the church. Like I think they were saying they got like some financial compensation, but like not a ton. So like also like the whole like not like even if you were to say something, you might not even get anything out of it. Will it make you feel free? Maybe in a sense, but I think at least I think that the main part why some people just don't say anything is because what are they gonna do? Just given the legalities of it all.
I think one thing kind of that you said before is like they talked about this in the movie too, but when you're like so young, you're like that. Like a lot of these kids came from like rough neighborhoods, like in the city, and when you're also like 6, 7, 8 years old, like if you tell people this, who are they gonna believe? The priest, who they're like, oh my gosh, like this man could do no wrong. Like they said in the movie, like when the priest comes to your house or he asks for your help, it's like God talking
basically,
through him.
Yeah.
So it's like, I'm not even saying like, maybe even like parents and stuff, they'd be like, well, like, are you just, like, exaggerating this? Like, I think it's really tough for anyone to admit that, especially a little kid that's already coming from a rough area and is already disadvantaged. They don't want, like, their friends to know about this. They don't want their, family to know about it. And at the end of the day, they probably don't even want to accept that it happened, and they just want to block it out of their memory, pretend like it never happened.
Which, like, I don't know, like, obviously I'm not a parent, but, like, if I was a parent and my 6-year-old child told me about some sort of situation that happened to them, like, I personally wouldn't know how they would have come up with that stuff by themselves, like, they're 6, they don't have that sort of, like, brain wired, and they don't have that education of, like, what things are, so, like, I just don't understand how some I know it was different back then, but, like, as a parent today, like, I would believe my kid,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I think that's why this is such an interesting movie, because there are so many, like, ethical debates you can bring up and talk about, and, like, perspectives that you can put and apply into these different theories. I guess what I'm trying to get at here today is, like, outweighing the consequences. And you talk about, first off, a reporter, trying to uncover the truth, and their obligation is to do that regardless of the consequences. Meanwhile, for the church, as we talked about, does their actions of portraying and preserving good outweigh the exposure of the few bad actors we've seen and the bad priests we're talking about here today? So I'm going to leave it with you guys, but where do you draw the line with the situation? Where is that common ground coming?
I personally don't think there really is a middle ground. Like, if you're a reporter and you have this duty to, like, publish the truth and, like, let people know, like, everything, no matter, like, if you're not gonna get certain, like, let me rephrase that, like, even if, like, half of your audience might not, like, want to believe what you're writing about, you still have that duty, because I guarantee you there are more people that are going to support it than, like, deny it. And then as the church, man, that's it's just getting a little fishy up there. Like, it really is. Like, I understand, like, you want to keep your reputation up, but, like, I feel like now it's more common to see these allegations come out probably because of this whole entire 2001 case. But I just think the church just needs to stop. But I don't know how you end this sort of situation.
Yeah, I feel like it's almost one of those problems that's so big and so widespread. Like, it's easy to solve, like, a localized issue. I mean, how do you solve something that's worldwide and goes up so high? Like, you don't know. I mean, no one really knows how high up this could go. I mean, I'm sure it goes into the Vatican, and who knows. So it's like some problems are just so big they seem unsolvable, and I feel like this is definitely one of them.
Yeah, it's just like this one step to, like, maybe make people feel free,
I think it's important that we're having these conversations about this type of stuff, because, like you were saying, it's a worldwide issue, and we should be trying to, find a solution for that.
Like, that's the problem. What is the
I know,
solution?
what is the solution?
That's a good question.
Right.
I don't know.
We'll talk about that next week.
Totally.
To wrap this up, Spotlight definitely raises a lot of critical questions about institutional responsibility, the ethics of journalism, the balance between loyalty and moral duty. I guess it just shows that uncovering the truth often comes with difficult situations, especially when faced with powerful organizations, and as we've seen here with this church and the churches in Boston. So I want to thank everybody for listening this week, and thank you guys for all your time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
10 out of 10.